Oh, doggy. Here we go. Uh,
Wow. Our second ride with Aaron Scott, and we barely scratched the surface. I had a hard stop, and kind of sorry I did, but
well, it's a jam-packed hour, and it's clear that he is a fountain of warmth and insightfulness, and his new book is just a killer, just a true gem. And we talk about what he's intended behind it and what the insights are behind it. He's very generous. And what I love about it is this is not a book pitch podcast. This is really a incredible conversation between one really amazing mind and a couple of guys who ride mopeds.
in their dreams.
Dreams matter.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. So really wonderful ride with Aaron. And I hope you enjoy it as well. Subscribe, support Blast, Compton Cowboys, drink adrenochrome cola in the privacy of your own home. Don't go out in the public. You'll get in trouble. And we love you.
Yeah.
Sis, hallo?
Blijven.
Bestuursdiger wegen them.
Joi, iets niet, joh.
Two outlaws on the lam, taking the back roads through America.
You can't drink enough coffee for this show.
And now it's time for Monday Madness with the Moped Outlaws, Greg and Mark.
And we're live with another episode, and this is our second time with author Aaron Scott. Welcome, Aaron. And he has a new book published called Before We Forget, Awaken Within, Arise Together, a guide to personal and collective awakening. Welcome, Aaron.
Hey, Greg. Hey, Mark. Excited to be back.
It's great to see you. What a fascinating subject, especially since I just woke up.
Uh-oh. Get some coffee in this man.
I'll do my best to augment the caffeine.
We were just talking about how this book has just come out, right?
It's been out for about 2 weeks now, and shockingly, I made Amazon #1 bestseller in 2 categories. So that's kind of cool. I wasn't expecting the reception, to be honest with you, given kind of the topic, but I mean, it's literally it's my heart and soul. So I guess it's worth something deep down
You're
inside.
resonating.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Well, first, congratulations. That's incredible news.
Thank you.
And I do think that a lot of people are turning attention to their own consciousness because there's so much chaos in the world.
I think that's right. And I think that, I think we touched on this briefly last time, but we really are at a turning point with, across human civilization, across human consciousness. I think that we have, again, so many tools at our disposal. And I think that those tools are really presenting themselves to be super effective in hearing different perspectives, gathering new information, just accumulating more knowledge. And I think that people haven't had the ability to touch a lot of these subjects that have been obscured, suppressed, whatever it might be, for a number of different reasons. So I think that we are certainly in a really kind of like magical time for humanity.
Do you think there's a reality? Because this age of Aquarius, of awakening, when I first learned of it as a kid, it was through the musical Hair, and the whole hippie thing with peace and love and vibrant colors. But it seems the reality of awakening is actually very challenging.
I think that's right. And I think that I'll mention this briefly, but when I get on shows or I on different podcasts or I speak places, I really try to look like the least awakened person. I don't want to be wearing like a robe with flowing hair. I mean, maybe I need a haircut, but because the point that I'm trying to display is that these are not esoteric, hippie dippy, spiritual bypassing topics. This subject is embedded, interwoven, part and parcel to human consciousness and reality, right? So, and I'm trying to show that, like, if you're a lawyer, this should be a topic that you want to discuss. If you're a teacher, a car mechanic, whatever it is. I mean, you're obviously, I have deep beliefs with respect to your profession shouldn't define who you are, but we can get into that later. But the point is that, for people who want to, I characterize it as living consciously. If you want to live consciously, these subjects should be pertinent and should be at the forefront of your mind, right? So, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of I'm familiar with kind of the idea of the age of Aquarius and sort of the shedding of the Piscean persona, Piscean archetype, Piscean age, and I think that it's crazy because I'm not the biggest kind of believer in kind of like revelation. I kind of wasn't brought up that way, but like the more you kind of like touch on the ideas, the broad ranging ideas, it's kind of like maybe I should like pay attention more here. Maybe I should listen more here because I mean, it's a lot of the boxes are being checked, right?
Right.
So it's kind of a really
by revelation, do you mean the Gospel of John in the Bible that talks about Armageddon? Is that what you mean?
No, but I mean, like, but look, there are parts of that like just like the general shift theme. If you go into some of the spiritual belief systems, whether they're ancient or even present, right? If you talk about New Earth, things of that nature, right? There is a common thread, right? There is this, and it's kind of funny how it manifests itself in the present reality, because I think what we're seeing now, which really kind of ushered this in, is what happened with COVID, the general kind of distrust of government and authority and media, and it's kind of through that first layer that people are starting to look for, we peel back this layer of the onion. Well, what else is beneath? What else are we not being told? What else are we missing? And
that's what you mean by revelation. The revelation
yes.
of all of the sort of shenanigans that have been going on.
Yes. Right. Revelation, not in the dot. Right. Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And then let's talk a little bit about a definition of awakening. Like, what is that?
Right. So, and this is really important to me because I think that it can be a misnomer. I think that it's misused. I think there's a kind of a broad ranging understanding of what it means. Right. So, there are many ideas of awakening, and my kind of core motivation in this book is to try and provide a kind of like practical everyday understanding of it. Right. I do this because I want to remove it again from kind of like the fringe discussions and place it kind of in the forefront of you, so you can of the individual, so you can like touch it and feel it. And important to that is also explaining that there is really this metaphysical thread, this spiritual thread that is woven through things. And again, this isn't about religious dogma. This isn't about religious revelation or the apocalyptic, texts, right? But and I didn't grow up studying, mystical, religious, ancient texts, right? So, but the point is that the awakening is not just that. It's a way of describing what's going on internally and then throughout humanity. But in truth, awakening is about shedding the indoctrinated scaffolding, if you will, that society has imposed on you. And it shows itself in many ways, right? It shows itself on an individual basis. It shows itself across civilization, even within the systems themselves, right? Through economy, religion, healthcare, right? So awakening is, well, let's talk about kind of like what being asleep is, right? So being asleep is to, in my book, I discuss is about being detached from kind of the deeper self, right? And it's to be moved and controlled, if you will, by kind of the pulse of industrial logic and externalities, right? So the external world. And this is kind of, and I put on blast in my book what awakening from this spell looks like, right? This is how I characterize awakening. And in doing so, I go into, the psychological component of it. I go into the societal component of it. I go into also the spiritual side of it. But again, not in the, again, esoteric realm understanding of it, in the real individual,
There's
practical.
there's a thing about the historical placement of this idea, which is that it was the purview of elite priest class or mystic class people who were divining it to us below folks in a way that was palatable because we weren't ready for the whole thing. But it's really clear that we've reached this level where, with information sources what they are, the evolution of the human capacity for understanding that goes with having a lot more access to information, that now it's available to us all without the intermediary.
Right. And I certainly don't want to be that coined intermediary. But what I want to do is I want to act as kind of a kind of like a vessel through which, I'm able to distill for you through my lens, right? And more readily access a cohesive framework, right, if you will. And I do it, in what I think is again, coherent, methodical way that people understand not only who they are, but what this idea of awakening is. And really, more importantly, not more importantly, but crucial to this effort is I try to make people who are experiencing awakening and going through the process not only feel like they're not going insane, but also make them feel like they are closer to living in actual reality and actually in tune with the sort of divine code, divine program that we have been blocked from, behind the veil. Sorry, go ahead, Greg. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you're speaking from experience, that you would see yourself some years ago as a person asleep, and you had an awakening, and you experienced times of challenge where you thought, am I going crazy? What's going on? Is that true?
I think that, for me, I was, from very early on, I worked on Wall Street for close to 2 decades. I was always kind of full throttle, and I was, drunk on the Kool-Aid, the performative Kool-Aid, where this is what success means. This is what life is about. This is what is important. And I digested the doctrine of Western hegemonic sort of ideology, right? I mean, this is what we're all brought up on. Now, I think that I have a kind of acute level of awareness when it comes to this stuff, and I think that I can internalize things different. I mean, we all internalize things differently, but I was kind of fully conscious of what I was doing, right? I also felt that there was a deep schism that I was perpetuating as a result of going kind of all in, right? And people can call it whatever they want. I mean, they can call it selling their soul. They can call it
compromising their integrity,
living blind, ignoring the, however you want to call it. It doesn't have to be so evil either. But the point is that I recognized that I was suppressing a kind of important inherent part of myself in order to strive and succeed, right? And I got to a point, call it two decades later, where I kind of looked in the mirror and I was like, who the fuck is this person? Like,
right?
What have I become? And really, who even am I? Right. So I had this kind of
goes on that journey, right?
Right.
And that's why it's everyone's awakening, because if you gain wisdom and you begin to reflect on what the harvest of your actions is and what you're participating in. And it really seems, from my vantage point at 62, it really seems like your generation and younger is coming in with a sort of a much more acute awareness and a little bit less of the veil, the conditioning that prevents this kind of insight. So, I think it's a function of human evolution as well as the information age that we are all in this reflection, right? Which is
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also there's also the societal component to it as well, right? Where historically there was marginalization, there was imbalance, there was inequality, but you were given something tangible, right? Like the government could lie to you. The government could destroy countries abroad, pushing Western hegemony. The government could manufacture
consent.
scarcity, right? Consent. Corporations could manipulate, but you were guaranteed that if you worked hard, that you weren't scraping by. You could afford a home. You could educate your children. You could purchase a car. You could live with some level of comfort, of tranquility. Now, people, and younger than me, I may look younger than I am, but people now don't have that. So they're kind of saying, look, so now the society's saying, digest the BS. Oh, but by the way, there's no upside to it. And they're kind of like, hold on one second. And now kind of the structure is not offering anything. There's no incentive. And so naturally, to your point, Mark, humanity, society, civilization is going to push back, right? And we can talk about this on kind of like a universal level. But again, all of these things, and this is kind of what's lost in a lot of these discussions, is all of these things transcend the astral, transcend the spiritual, and bleed into the practical everyday. It's all part of one big ecosystem, right? And this is an important part. So people verbalize it a different way or different ways, but it's all part of the same thread, because we exist in the material and then also in the spiritual realm, right? So, sorry, go ahead.
It's what I'm hearing, and what I personally experience is it's the macro and micro together. There is no separation. And I find it very difficult to talk about both in a very inclusive way. I'm either in the realm of macro or micro, and it's very difficult to speak inclusively. He's holding up his book for those of you.
That's what I try to do. This is what this does, right? Because the big disconnect for me, and this is kind of when I started thinking about how I wanted to kind of bring my light onto the world, if you will, right? I kind of said, what's missing here? Like, what am I not able to grab hold of? How can I help people who are looking? And that was like the main thread, right? It was like, people are not able to link definitively with their everyday lives, with their jobs, with their family, with their identity, with how they get up and feel themselves in the morning, with these metaphysical, with these spiritual concepts. And that's what I'm trying to do with this book, right? So that is absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And this to me is so important, because when you can show people that this isn't some hippie dippie discussion or something relegated to an ayahuasca retreat or a meditation ceremony, like when you can make that connection to people, this is what brings change. This is what makes people connect, and this is what allows people to resonate with these discussions and these topics.
Together, we're discovering that the brass ring's not way out here. It's actually inside. And the keys of all of that are available to us right now. And your book is pointing people back to remembering who they really are and what they're ultimately already integrated into, which is the natural world and natural law. And absolutely, I want to expand the discussion, but I really want to talk about the book a little bit more. Some authors I've spoken to, when they start to bring forth these kinds of insights that were previously sort of tried either purposefully or accidentally sort of kept from people's view, went through spiritual challenges or hauntings or kinds of trials around that. And I'm wondering if you experienced any kind of disruption or challenges that went into creating this book.
This has been like the biggest labor of love for me. The hauntings only existed when I was suppressing them in the previous kind of like professional pursuit, to be honest with you. I mean, it was really a crippling. I traumatized myself for years, right? And again, everybody kind of experiences trauma differently, but through my work ethic and through my through living my life solely through the egoic mind, right? I destroyed relationships. I created real turmoil for myself, right? So we just entered the astral plane there. Did you guys see
Yeah,
that or no?
that was wild.
That was weird.
Sorry, I
I
pushed the
gotta-
wrong button.
gotta-
I was trying to cover my cough, and I hit the wrong button.
I got to do my hair. But yeah, so no, I haven't had that. I've not had that experience. It's really kind of been maybe one of the most cathartic, kind of like therapeutic experiences for me, because it also kind of like substantiated and made my thinking more concrete, where like, I kind of read this afterwards and I was like, like, I'm so proud of this, because it shows people like me and others, or people who are interested, that there's something like tangible, that this isn't about psychosis. This is not what this is. In truth, it's a reintegration to actual reality, to the natural order of things, not the synthetic overlay that we have superimposed on society and that we have internalized as a civilization, or individually even, right? I mean, we digested this poison and we have sanctified it, but in truth, it is a cancer to both ourselves and the world around us. So, I mean, so again, but because it's normalized, because we've normalized what I call disconnection, it's seen, anything else is seen as, kind of strange or on the fringe. So yeah, I mean, this process really, kind of legitimized for me and gave me strength on the back of it.
What just sparked in my mind with what you just said is, I see our youth as very broad-minded, conscious, pushing the boundaries of things with gender exploration, sexual exploration, identity. And I see the adult world labeling a lot of that as a disease, like, oh, you have ADHD, or, it's something to be treated, which I think comes from this separation belief that you're talking about.
I think that ADHD, particularly, is maybe one of the most misdiagnosed diseases, if you will. I would question that it even is a disease, right? I think that if you look at the education system specifically, and I talk about this in my book, but if you look at the education specifically, I mean, this is, without going deep into the origins of it, but this is what's found on the Prussian model, which creates docile conformist workers, right? I mean, this is what it was based on industrial logic. So you're creating effectively a cog in a wheel, and in order to succeed in this system, you must succeed through this linear path, right? If you have high emotional intelligence, if you have a high EQ versus an IQ, for example, if you're not strong in quantitative analytical reasoning, or the things measured by the SAT, or the other kind of like hollow metrics, then you are not smart. Then you need medication, right? I mean, like, we've had an entire generation that has grown up under this veil of misunderstood intelligence. I also, in my book, I talk about what artificial intelligence really is, but how it's like kind of like the apex of disembodiment. But that's later. We don't really understand even human intelligence left. So how are we going to say that artificial intelligence is the evolution of consciousness? A, and B, how are we going to say that this limited scope of intelligence that we impose on children is what it truly is, right? So absolutely. And I think that every generation, I think that as we go, right, as we evolve, as the years go by, I think that what's crucial is the ability to question and to ultimately not conform, because conformity breeds intellectual dullness. It breeds the downfall of society.
It breeds
de-evolution. Absolutely.
So
right.
I want to get back to your process a little bit, because I love that we're getting expansive here, but what kinds of research and what was your process around writing this book like? What was the flow? What was your day-to-day? How did you create this thing?
So I've structured this book into 4 sections. The first section is called The Fracture, which is where I discuss kind of the veils of deception, the illusions that we have sanctified, that, you know, the code that we have, the code and the programs that we have adopted to be sacred, but in truth are distortions. Right? I talk first and foremost about the illusion of separation. It's important because people have to understand that we are all connected, that we are multiple ecosystems that breed and feed off of one another. And if we don't honor that and recognize that, we create a diseased world, you know, quite frankly. I talk about my second chapter is about I call it the sacred distorted, which is where I go into religion, every single religion, every single belief system. And I show how through institutionalization, we systematically sever the connection between the human being and source, God, however you want to discuss that. I talk about how the divine in truth operates in our reality, through the feminine and the masculine principles of polarity. I talk about how, again, these religious institutions that we've sanctified, how they not only not only distorted the sacred balance, but how they methodically suppressed the feminine, and how they did so to increase power, to cultivate a society, and to gain control as a result.
Mhm.
And how that really, when you peel back the layers, has served, through their hierarchical structure, has served as the blueprint for the modern world. And how religion, although maybe not be as heavily practiced dogmatically, and whose doctrines are not necessarily adhered to as literally in the present age, they are still the foundational blueprint for economy, for media, education, from the way that we look at ourselves and the world around us. To explain what that means quickly, well, obviously there's, you know, we can look at like the patriarchal structure of religion, right? But more importantly, on a deeper level, more practical level, it was how the church and other religions sanctified hierarchy, where they said that God is above, then man, then earth. In truth, distortion, because it's all one big playing field. Everybody
The
is
above
everybody is
of the
source.
below, and the below is of the above. We're not
Right.
separate.
So, but when we enter the world, understanding this, well, what happens? Well, we create industry around hierarchy. We give up agency to authority figures. Person sits on the television in a nice suit and a fancy dress and speaks clearly and eloquently. Well, they're the authority. We listen to them, right? Well, this is ingrained in school. You sit in front of a teacher who dictates to you. You digest and then you regurgitate. You don't question. There's no, you know, cyclical discourse here. There's no, how does it make you feel? What do you think about this, right? This is a mechanical, industrial, hierarchical process. And we have done this, and it has shaped human consciousness in ways that people don't see. Right?
It's
So I show,
specifically designed to harvest our energies in the form of monetary and material gain for the
yes,
ones who run the system. And so that initially was proffered with this idea of the shepherd, of trust us, we know what's necessary, and we're going to build something that takes care of all of you. But that got corrupted over time. And so now what we've left is this machine that's continually sucking people's life force out of them and enticing them into a bad deal. And then all the monetary energy, or the energy of society, then gets harvested to a smaller and smaller group of elites that aren't nearly as benevolent as they once were, and that we don't actually need them to be anymore.
well, right. And I talk about this in the book. I talk about how the successful ones are in truth the most disconnected from themselves and the most spiritually starved. Why? Because they drank the Kool-Aid, and they're thriving and killing it in the external world, but they are vapid. And in fact, and by the way, this is the cliche, or there's the common kind of theme that you hear from people. You know, obviously money doesn't buy happiness, blah blah blah. But but really wealthy people are not happy.
Right.
Because why? Well, because they've structured their entire reality around through the egoic mind, through survival, through dominance, through extraction, right. So, and then when you have, again, this sanctified hierarchy, you're always worrying about people using you for money or people to, right. So like they feed into this unseen ecosystem that exists, but they are just as victimized in many ways as society, because again, everything is connected.
And you
I would
can't
say-
repress the natural evolution. They eventually come around and start to awaken.
But I would caution that generalization. Like I know 2 very wealthy people who are also very happy. And I think, again, coming to the premise that both of you have stated, we're talking about total connection, right? So the external of finances isn't the cause of unease internally.
No, and it's not about happiness. It's not a discussion on happiness either. It's not happiness or sadness. It's about the connection with themselves, with who they truly are. Because Greg, I'm sorry, if you truly were connected to yourself and you truly had your values structured coherently, you would not be focused on myopically accumulating wealth. You just wouldn't. It's irrational.
But neither of them are focused on that. It's just they have it. It's a part of their life.
In truth, it's ridiculous and it's short-sighted and small-minded to make a generalization about everybody, because that's not the case. I know plenty of people who are very happy, but through my experience, and I know a lot of them, I think one of the major common threads is that they just, I can't explain it, but they're either like hypnotized by something that disconnects them from themselves, or they're not happy, or and by the way, again, you can't say it's the same thing for everybody, but from my experience, that just seems to be the truth.
What I think all 3 of us would agree is that when we, humanity, have created a life where very few have more than they'll ever use, and there's plenty of people starving where the basics aren't being met, that is a dysfunctional way of living.
Absolutely. And yeah,
and it's not mirrored in nature. When we actually unpack Darwinism, cooperative structures actually function more efficiently, where the things that we need are spread around in a way that feeds us all.
Well, it's also, the Darwinian principle of survival of the fittest is a farce.
It's a misnomer, right? And if you study the book, he mentions cooperative societies much more than he does in terms of domination. And
right. And so let me just finish with the arc here. I know we're going to jump off, but let me try to stay on track. But so I try to lay out these distortions, the inversions to the natural order, the natural rhythms and the flow, and then I talk about, then I transition that into awakening, what that looks like, right? What that looks like for the individual self when you peel back the inherited beliefs, when you peel back the dogma, the doctrine, the sense of self, the skewed identity, what that looks like, what somebody goes through in that situation. And I offer kind of a reprieve. I offer kind of like a sanctuary where you can kind of reintroduce yourself to yourself, and show that living coherently through the natural rhythms, natural orders, through your true self is really kind of what it's all about, right? And I talk about what success really should look like. And to Greg's point, it's not about whether you made money or not. It's about kind of how you did it, right? So if you're true to yourself, if you're a great painter, or if you're a great accountant, right? And you're doing what you love because you love it in and of itself. I think Jung said to live life knowing who you truly are is like the greatest gift. I mean, this is what it's about, right? So if you can honor yourself, your true self, in this structure, through this society, that's what's really sacred. That's what it's really about, because you're going with the natural order. You're using the natural universal order flowing through you. You're being true to yourself. It's about integrity. and it's about integrity with yourself.
And I think part of, like, for instance, let's say your book becomes New York Times #1 bestseller, you're going to have a wealth from that experience. And I imagine that part of who you are, living with integrity, is some of that will be spread back out into society.
Absolutely. And I have a hard time. I've always kind of been as philanthropic as I can be. And I just find, just in like daily life, I find the whole, again, I'm also kind of more tuned in, I think, but just not to be as giving as you can be, generally speaking. I mean, when you're leaving a tip, when you're paying for services, I mean, like, just to kind of have like the awareness that, having the right relationship, well, with everything, but having the right relationship with money is so important, because when you sanctify exchange, when you have sacred exchange in your life, it breeds prosperity, because you're not toxifying something that doesn't have to be inherently evil, right?
And I think part of what we're talking about too is you're included in this generosity. So if you're giving everything away to the point where you personally can't sustain your own self, that also is a disease.
Absolutely. And by the way, I've done it before. I've been too generous. So I know what that's like, because I think it had a lot to do with, because maybe maybe not too much way, but to a point where it was not the right, I mean, it wasn't the right balance, right? Everything requires balance, right?
Right.
Well, right. And there's this idea of enabling, which is if we allow someone to not develop the capacity to be their own producer, not in terms of what capitalism and society is conditioning us to do, but just the recognition of their own innate capacity, their own agency, then we're actually harming them. Right. So there's this balance between supporting their process of self-awakening and then actually just giving them, the milk of life without them having to develop what they need in order to survive on their own.
That's right. That's right. And I think that that's can be a slippery slope, because we've structured our lives around, and our conscience around money, right? So we think that through money we are offering love and we're offering care, and but this is like a delusion, but it's a product of our society. So then I go through that process. I show what awakening looks like with the internal self, with the actual person, and what you gain from living, again, with this integrity and coherence with the universal flow, with who you truly are. And then I offer frameworks for the real world, for society. I call them threads, where talk about things like parallel structures. I talk about things like awakened sovereignty. How through like liberal thought, how we've misunderstood what it means to be in, what independence means, what it means to be powerful. I mean, like, through guys like Locke, who determined that money was the definition of independence, having monetary sovereignty. And this is again, these are constructs, right? So, and we've formed society around them. People don't realize that, but we have. And I talk about how we, again, to how Mark brought it up, how we need to tune to nature more often and use it as a mirror, and look at nature and see the ebbs and flows, and recognize that, again, we are part of nature. We are not living in nature. We are nature. We are biological beings. And we don't think we are, but we are. I mean, the tide ebbs and flows, with a rhythm. Our heart has a rhythm. We inhale oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. Well, vegetation and trees do the opposite, right? So we are part of not only the ecosystems, but we're part of nature itself. And we've detached ourselves again, and we've superimposed this industrial logic upon ourselves. And with alarm clocks and screens and all these different, little idiosyncratic ways. And we need to attune to the natural world, because the further we disconnect from the natural world, guess what? It's my thesis that the more suffering we impose on ourselves, because we mechanize human life, and we are not machines. We are a sophisticated, designed, biological being, but we are not machines. We are in tune with a real sacred natural rhythm. And if we keep suppressing that, what do you think is going to happen to autoimmune disease, to cancer, to all these are not things that exist in a
Accidents.
vacuum.
Yeah, they're not accidents. They're happening
right.
because there's a cause and effect relationship to the universe. And one of the things that occurs to me is this sort of romanticization of indigenous populations and how they had that connection to the natural rhythms of the world. And so there's this yearning that emerges in the framework of cultural appropriation to be reconnected to that. But it sounds like one of the pathways that you enumerate in your book is the idea that it's actually an internal journey to find that, to reconnect through your own ancestral lineage, to your own indigenous way of being, and find the answer that lives within you, to wake up to who you really are underneath these conditions.
I think that that's absolutely true. I think that everyone would agree that it's everything is only through you. Your reality is only through Greg, is only through Mark. So for someone to impose their perspective on you, great, it might give you perspective, but it's not you. You're not living it. So you have to yourself find your truth through their message, through their experience, through whatever they're trying to allow to resonate with you. So yes, everything, this whole discussion has to resonate with the individual personally. And from that place, and you'll also find that there's a common thread with most human beings, but that's another discussion, but that's part of the natural design. But from that place, this is where you awaken. You don't awaken through a guy in a pulpit dictating dogma. It's a rational, it's a logical, but you need to provide people the path. You need to show people that there's a place to begin. There's a place to start, and that place starts always and never anywhere else, and always with you, right? So absolutely right. It's absolutely, and also, if I may, Mark, you mentioned indigenous societies, and I carved out an entire chapter on this because I thought it was very important. We live under the lie of I call it the savage human, where everybody is a savage unless they are conditioned by morality and ethics. But this is a distortion. In truth, it's more of a half truth, right? We are inherently relational beings. The soul is relational. In fact, I posit in my book that the soul doesn't know anything but relation. It can't exist autonomously. That's just the way it is. But we are the byproduct of our society, of our upbringing, of our relationship with ourself. And it's interesting because the empires across the globe, they legitimize destroying indigenous civilizations across the globe because it was the Christian doctrine that was going to save them. And they were saving the world through mass slaughter and genocide. I mean, again, another logic that's been adopted and accepted to be normal, right? But in truth, and you read, and there's a lot of, I think you get a sense that there's a lot of historical texts that I use, a lot of reference. This isn't just kind of like me blabbing on. I cite specific quotes, I cite specific texts, I cite across, vast time periods. But one point that I honed in on was when Columbus discovered the indigenous people in you saw that, right? People in the Caribbean, right? I mean, he said like these people are the most peaceful, welcoming. I handed them a spear, they cut their finger on it, right? So what's interesting is that we sanctify a industrial capitalist society that honors greed, that honors inequality, that honors savage behavior, and then we ignore that that's what caused it, right? So it's a kind of a crazy kind of sleight of hand, but it's actually, in truth, it's how we've conditioned ourselves and how we've allowed society to shape the human being. That's what creates the savage human. This isn't inherent to indigenous society or a lack of religious ordinance. I mean, this is absurd, right? So I really kind of focus on that, and I explain how we have savagely misappropriated the term, and how when you rewild, or I call it unleashing consciousness, when you unleash consciousness, you are in truth coming more in tune with the wild world around us, which is not wild at all. It is the most.
Well, it's not savage.
It's not
It's
savage.
wild, but it's not brutal.
Right. But wild is not savage, right? It's the
Right.
most sophisticated, ordered infrastructure you could possibly imagine, right? So this is an important part that I linked, and I talk about this in the thread section, because it's about the threads is about how you look at the world around you and society, and structure society to adhere to this new orientation to the world around you, right? Through awakened consciousness. And in truth, when you look at the possibilities, I mean, you have to be optimistic, because there are just so many beautiful ways that you can do it, where you are honoring life, where you are honoring human beings, where you're not taking away, where you're not hoarding through fear, where you're not manufacturing scarcity. There's just so much possibility. It's just about getting people to pull the trigger. And one more point, because I've been droning on and on, but one point that's important is that, if the dominant infrastructure, if the dominant systems will not evolve, right? Because you're going to have pushback from power structure, then that's okay. We create what I call, I'm sure other people maybe, I don't know, but you create a parallel structure, which operates alongside, whether it's through a cooperative or a mutual aid network, or, I mean, you structure something along, and guess what? It's going to resonate with people, because it is, again, a coherent structure. It is a structure that is rooted in sincerity and integrity, not just on an individual basis, but on a collective societal basis. And whether people realize it or not, they will gravitate towards that, because they'll know something deep inside of them will know. They will resonate with, they may not know what it is, but I say that it's their soul. It's the unwavering part of them. It's their self. It's their true self, not their indoctrinated husk that they identify as themselves.
What just sparked in my mind with what you just said was part of the chop wood, fetch water element of life is we come together, and then there's biological needs like shelter and food. And I just thought of, biblically speaking, the loaves and the fishes are bringing it more modern day. What happened at Woodstock when Wavy Gravy famously said, we're going to feed, we have breakfast in bed for 250,000 people. And it seems like that's part of this organic alignment, that the needs are met in the moment. Somehow we could call it miraculous, but I think more importantly, because miraculous for me brings it back to that disconnection of something unnatural happened, where I think really the miracle is natural.
Well, what we
Absolutely
see
right. And
is that with the emergence of organic foods, alternative treatment methods, these parallel systems sprout up just like the weeds in my front sidewalk. It's like nature's just going to continue to remind us how really temporary a lot of these structures are, and that we can't ignore that. If and once we start to choose to be in alignment with certain natural phenomena, it breeds on itself. We gain more and more of the things that we need as a result of it. And it's the hypnotism of systems that are trying to control our thought or trying to bind us in conflict with each other through social media algorithms and political identity and all of these things that we need to disrupt. Because when you just disrupt it enough, the brilliance of our actual context and the reality of our connection is undeniable. And so waking up is not that hard. It's just a
Right.
matter of creating just enough space for people
That's right.
where they can grapple with the paradox of self and source, and how, well, yes, I have to define this self thing, and then recognize that it's actually going to dissolve into this non-self thing. And how do I deal with the contradiction and the paradox of that in a way that continues to provide for the material needs of my body and my culture? And I think we've been shown, like we talked a little bit about the hippie dippie thing. That was a breakthrough moment where we got this idea that things didn't have to be the way that we'd been doing them. And what we're in now culturally is kind of a refractory period against that, where old systems now realize that they've seen the writing on the wall and that there's another way of doing things. And so they're gripping as hard as they can. They're trying so hard to recast the spell, but they can't. It's just breaking down naturally by number. And so the premise of your book is that if each one of us figures out how to decode the toxic elements of ourself and re-encode with the integral parts of ourself, we are an undeniable force in an undeniable natural universe.
That I couldn't have said it better. And to bring, we've been talking very kind of metaphysical, or maybe not as much as I think we are, but to your audience, you know, we talk about kind of like the poison pill, right? The main disruptor. And it's through money. So when people awaken, what happens is people remove their consciousness. They remove their consent from the external, through the synthetic systems and products that they've been dependent on, whether it's through artificial candies, whether it's through artificial media, whether it's through fashion and obsessing over material goods, or buying your kid 100 toys, right? When you wean people off of that addiction and this brings them closer to themselves. And when people start to do that, they spend less. And when you spend less, you neuter the toxic infrastructure. Because and by the way, this is about the power lies with the people. This isn't about the pitchforks and storming the Capitol and saying we taxation without representation. Obviously, we're not being represented, but that's a different score. But the point is that you take back power and control. You usurp the infrastructure. You use their system against them. I don't want to say there because it gets conspiratorial, because it's my belief that we are part of the problem as well, right? But this is how you usurp this. You take what it's dependent upon and you pull it away. And when enough people realize that they don't need all of these things, they don't need a new car every 2 years, they don't need 70 pairs of shoes. And this is sickness. I call it in my book, excess trauma, which is about by having so much is really a sign of trauma. But the point is that we have the power. The power lies with the people, because we, through our money, empower this infrastructure, empower these systems. And when we come close to ourselves, when we buy food that satiates us, nourishes us, and we find peace internally, this breaks down the infrastructure. This breaks down that scaffolding.
It's inevitable, really,
Yeah.
because you can't stop it.
No, it's a natural look. There is again back to the balance, the sacred polarity, the sacred balance order between the masculine and the feminine. However you want to digest it, the universe exists. It creates the polarity and sustains itself through balance. We see it in the natural world. So if we are so far skewed to one side, again, look at it metaphysically, look at it naturally, look at it biologically, it's going to bounce back into an equilibrium. So again, yeah, I think we talked about this last time, but good luck trying to force it into keeping it into this state that's unkillable. that's way out of whack, it's going to push back.
Well,
It's just
your book
happen.
represents the portal for people to take responsibility for their selves. And once that once that happens, it causes a literal chemical reaction, person to person, society to society. The elements of toxicity are bound to dissolve in the face of this awakening. And what's great about your book is that it's not couched in terms of some kind of cult following or some kind of dogma that you have to follow. It's actually just like, hey, guess what? It's waiting for you in the way that you need it to look. And if you just step through and have the relationship with yourself and your ancestors and the context we're all in, you can have a much richer, more satisfying, fulfilling life. And we can start to heal what it is that's not functional in our society. And I love how the book is such an open invitation, right? But it doesn't stop there. Like, one of the other things that you're doing is you have this podcast, right?
Yes.
And I saw a couple of the episodes than that, and they had some amazingly cogent and important social discussions in them about the Fed, about the state of Israel, things that are really relevant to us. And then third, getting in touch with you and being able to actually interact with you on the process of individually uncovering this part of self is really accessible. Like, you offer coaching services, and I looked at the pricing and the focus of them, and they're somewhat out of reach for people who are below the poverty line. But the reality is, you've really made yourself available at a level that is commensurate with the time and energy you've invested to develop these ideas, and then the heart of what you see in humanity. And so, really, folks, if you have 5 minutes, get yourself to theaaronscott.com. And of course, we'll put this stuff on the show notes, and just poke around there. Get the book, get the introductory session with Aaron. Like, this sounds
I give away a 30-minute free introductory session when you purchase the book. So that's on the house. So
right?
You get to talk to me for free.
And this
for
sounds
30
like
minutes.
a pitch, because we're so conditioned to think of everything as a marketing thing, but it's not. It's happening. I'm saying this because I'm having an emotional experience right now, because I resonate with what Aaron is trying to accomplish through the recognition of our common humanity. And we need this so much in our lives right now.
I appreciate that, Mark, and it's so true that we are so conditioned to what's the angle, what's the edge, what's the scam, right? And I really try to, in my book, make people see that this is about them coming into themselves, and that I really care, because that's what this is about. I mean, I wouldn't be wasting my time if I thought it was a waste of time, if I didn't really care, if it wasn't really bought into it, right? I mean, what other motivation is there? I could be doing right? So this is really about trying to usher in an evolved human consciousness. And I believe deep down inside that it's accessible, it's attainable, and it's crucial if we have any real expectation for, our own survival on a real sustainable level, both mentally, spiritually, physically. I mean, this is really what it's about. If you resonate with humanity and you care about the generations that follow, I mean, this has to be something that resonates with you, in my opinion. It certainly strikes me at the core.
Well, we also orient around a struggle, like it's some kind of thing that we have to struggle with. But when we look around us, the flowering of humanity is occurring, and it's undeniable. So when we remove these kinds of things that are holding us back, imagine what we can create together. The limit is just, there isn't one. And the way that we could create the world and the experience we have has a richness to it that we have yet to realize. And we see it in the promise of special effects in movies, or AI, or incredible medical breakthroughs, or situations where a whole group of people decide, you know what, we're going to go on Reddit and have a discussion, and we're going to replace the whole government without them even knowing. Like, that actually happened this summer, people. Look it up. So I am so grateful for the work you've put into this and for the ongoing thing. And as you can see, I'm animated, I'm excited, and it isn't the beet juice.
No, that does have a part to do with it. And
Right.
unfortunately, I have a hard stop at the top of the hour, and I feel like we've just scratched the surface. We might need a third ride with you, Aaron.
We'll set something up. I'm definitely keen to come back. I love you
All right.
guys, and we'll give your audience some decent space, but we'll be in touch. I think I owe you guys a reconnect on a different plane. So we'll connect after this.
Well, let's say it's
All
not an ode. Let's just say that there's a desire here to further this
Yes.
conversation
Yes.
for us and for the benefit of all with harm to none. And normally we ask a question.
No,
but-
we gotta do it.
okay, but he's already answered it on the
Yeah,
other.
but maybe times change. You never know.
Okay,
This
so
moment
here we
is
go.
different than the previous moment.
Foo
So,
Fighters.
What did he say? I missed it.
How come?
No, I said Foo Fighters.
Okay.
I know. How come? How come?
I'm a sucker for the Foo Fighters and Nirvana for that matter. Just better than Eminem.
Got it.
All
Have you
right.
seen the recent performances that they did that were online?
David Grohl
Yeah.
and
No,
company.
the Foo Fighters
Fighters.
played again.
With their
recently.
new
The Foo-
drummer.
Oh, I didn't see it. No.
Yeah, go
It's on
figure
you.
that. It's
I'll
you
check
can
it
find
out.
The whole show. Someone did their thing on with their phone online. It's not like a pro.
Oh,
level.
okay.
You can see the whole show.
But the
I'll
audio
check
is
it out.
really good.
Yeah,
I'll check
actually
it
is
out.
pretty good.
The audio is super.
They're great. They're great.
Yeah.
I know.
All right.
I know. Greg's a big Eminem fan, but we won't hold it.
I love
against him.
them both.
Yeah. Aaron Scott, thank you for all that you've done to bring yourself to the place where you could create such impressive work, and for making yourself available. Everybody looks forward to more, and you're welcome here anytime. And go out and buy the book, folks. I'm definitely going to buy a copy, and we'll see you soon, hopefully.
Recording stopped.